Welcome, Devorah. Nice to see you. Let's bless Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign over time and space, who makes us holy with commandments, commands us to engage in the study of Torah. So we're going to do a little micro lesson here. Works super quick. So anytime I include Eugene Borowitz of blessed memory, it's to reflect the importance of his covenant theology, which is his signature theological framework. Studied it in rabbinic school, studied with him directly, a book that he wrote called Renewing the Covenant. So, the big question from which this comes, and the article was about theology. So just reviewing that experience, there is kind of a universality that marks Jewish thinking, but also particularity. And the two stand in a certain tension for Borowitz. Yeah. There's also this idea of autonomy and responsibility, right? Autonomy for its own sake is not something that Borowitz champions. Autonomy as a way of framing our commitments to be responsible. In other words, we are free to be responsible for the covenant, for a life of Torah, for the mitzvot. This is sort of the key. This is the key. Torah ultimately moderates our individual autonomy.
Okay.
And so have a read here, Devorah. This is the conclusion. Rabbi Matthew, who was talking about the various forms of theology in Reform Judaism, had to say.
Okay. On balance, Jewish thinkers have opted for the existence of relative free will, claiming that without some amount of free will, morality is a cruel myth, an illusion, if not a delusion. For us to be moral beings, we must have the ability to act in accordance with our own will, instead of simplifying a complexity and regarding free will and determinism as binary opposites. Jews have repeatedly insisted on the holistic and, arguing for a complementarity that defies and transcends logic by asserting that free will and determinism can and do exist, rather than answer the question, do we have free will or is our fate predetermined? Jews have kept the question alive by rejecting the or and replacing it with and, thereby giving us reason to address it as an enduring dilemma.
All right, so free will, autonomy are significant values. Understanding that our lives are atzat hashamayim, in the hands of heaven.
Right.
Talked about this in mysticism, in Honey from the Rock, that, God's will has some determining reality in our lives. You remember I said that Rabbi Kushner said that free will is overrated.
Yeah.
But I think Reform Judaism is, let's not underrate free will. Let's not underrate predeterminism or determinism. There's sort of both there. And they have a certain creative and spiritual tension they create in our lives, or cause in our lives. That said, and bring back Borowitz into the conversation, free will, yes. Responsibility, yes. We are free to be responsible. It's essentially the nature of the covenant as originally intended. We as a free people receive the commandments at Sinai. We enter into the Brit with God. It means that we will, as free people, choose to live a life of responsibility. And the rest of it will be in the hands of heaven.
But we can also choose not to.
And with free will comes the choose to opt in and opt out. Right. All right. So we're going to take a quick run here through the work of Rabbi Mark Dov Shapiro, blessed memory. He's talking here about Shabbat. And so we have a very important quote
from
a significant cultural Zionist, Ahad Ha'am,
right,
instrumental in the establishment of the state of Israel, in particular its commitment to Jewish culture. And you've probably heard this quote before.
I have.
More than the people of Israel have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the people of Israel. Reaction.
That's true. I mean, and notwithstanding the different ways of observing Shabbat, because having done it the Orthodox way for 10 years, I guess, a lot of what I learned, a lot of what I know came from that. My formative years from the age of 12 to 22, when I finished college and moved out of my house. So that saying means a lot. But the interesting thing to me, I have to tell you that I never felt more Jewish than I did in Jerusalem on Shabbat.
Okay.
Friday night, Friday afternoon, we went to services, and then we went to a person's house for dinner with some other people. And then she took us to the Y because she was going to do a tour tomorrow going through it, and she wanted to see how it looked. And then they dropped us off at the hotel, and everybody is out walking.
Yeah.
Everybody is walking around. It's a Shabbos walk, Shabbat walk. And that to me was something the closest thing I came to was biennial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody around you is doing the same thing and enjoying it. It's an amazing thing. I think everybody should go at least once, maybe twice.
It's like an extended Shabbat.
It is. It's just an amazing, and to see all these Jews together, and
yeah,
it's a good thing.
So let me ask you a question about your narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Be it at biennial or during your trip to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
How would you answer this part, Shabbat has kept the people, Israel?
It's something that ties us all together. It happens every week. Okay. It's ongoing. And if you don't observe Shabbat, and I know a lot of people who do not, more people do it now because they can do it from their home and they don't have anything else to do. But because it's always there for you to reach out or find or discover. So, and I've done Shabbat differently, different times in my life, and it's just a very interesting experience that I don't think too many people get to have. I think camp is great for kids.
Right.
Because you get that experience and you don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
And even retreats at camp are good for grown-ups.
Sure.
But I think that if we didn't have that every week, ongoing, it's always there. And if you know something about it, great. But if you don't know and you find out, then it can keep you going.
I get it. So, if we build on this first part of Shmirat HaShabbat, of keeping Shabbat, we're probably going to do so through activities like lighting candles or saying Kiddush or praying a service with great sincerity or studying Torah, or we're going to rest.
Or dinner.
We're going to have a meal, a festive meal. We're going to do Rikudei Am. We're going to do some folk dancing. We're going to do Shirah. We're going to sing.
Right.
We're going to keep these practices, and it's going to perpetuate the Shabbat experience by virtue of our practice.
And the operative word is practice.
Right. Because of our effort, we're going to do our part to keep the Shabbat. But Ahad Ha'am saying, well, no, it's not just that. In fact, it's even more so the case that Shabbat has kept Israel. And I think you bring it to bear. What about it keeps us? The connection with community, the sense of being part of a larger people, communion with God, the joy that comes from dancing or singing or celebrating, having a meal together, enjoying the sacred time, resting, longing for the Sabbath, to come even when it's leaving us and we want to come back. That hope that Shabbat bride will return keeps us optimistic, keeps us faithful. So it makes sense that Shabbat has a way of keeping us, not just a part of a set of rules that we need to follow.
Right.
Not even something that we do because we like it. We do it because it keeps us on our Jewish journey, keeps us aspiring Jewishly. Very nice. Let's continue. Moving right along. Big question for today, Devorah. Do you run through life so quickly that you sometimes feel breathless? Are you always busy? If so, Judaism offers you an alternative. Instead of noise, think quiet. Instead of 24/7, think 1 in 7. Consider the possibility that at least one day in 7, you give yourself permission to pause, or to put the matter in more traditional terms, try Shabbat. Is this true? Do you feel breathless?
To rest.
Are you always busy?
Actually, I'm more busy now because I'm teaching a lot of kids, and I have a pretty full schedule. And I've tried to carve out time so I can go to the doctor. I have to have a hearing test tomorrow.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I do feel busy.
Yeah.
Really busy. And you think that things will slow down, and then you turn around and they're not. They're just getting faster.
Yeah.
And it's hard. But it's nice that the thing about my schedule now is that Friday night and Saturday morning have always been blocked off, but they're at home. We don't have to drive anywhere. And sometimes after services, we go to brunch, depending.
Yeah.
Probably not anymore because most of them are outside. Although if this weather were today was Saturday or Sunday, I'd be at my restaurant.
I know, it's beautiful today.
Gorgeous. I had to go to the doctor. It was lovely.
So Shabbat is the answer to this question.
Yeah.
Right? If the answer is yes, I feel breathless. I feel so busy I can't even think. I feel just so frazzled. I'm falling apart here.
Well,
Judaism provides Shabbat. Shabbat is that island in time that allows you to not worry about working all day, but resting and celebrating God and Torah and community and sacred practice for one day out of 7. Surely a way of renewing ourselves, of freeing ourselves, enjoying the permission to just stop and take in life. So, of course, the name of this chapter is Take Back
Your Time.
Your Time, which is really Take Back Shabbat.
I have to tell you, though, the one thing that comes to mind is how I watch my neighbor who has 7 children.
Mm-hmm.
She's carrying her 8th, and her daughter, they bake challah every Friday. And usually during the summer, we get it around 5:30. Now, with the time change and everything, you got so much more to do on Friday afternoon before Shabbat. I just remember my mother, like whirling around on Fridays, getting ready for Shabbat and everything. I think in some ways it's easier for a guy to observe Shabbat because they don't have to they have to wash up and everything, but they don't have to clean the house. They don't have to, get the kids all dressed.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work beforehand.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily get to rest on Shabbat.
Right. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Or, whether it's Jewish professionals or moms with tons of kids, hopefully they have proper support.
That's
so
why
they have some semblance of Shabbat as well.
Well, Ruthie and I are doing services while you and Cantor are gone.
We thank you for that.
But like I said, it's because I don't have to worry about teaching that Tuesday.
Right.
And gives me some wiggle room, if you will, to be able to concentrate on. It's hard. I know it's hard. Yeah. And every time I think of something, I wish they hadn't done that. And I go, no, stop. That's hard. That's hard stuff to do. It's what you've done all your life is totally different now. Yeah. And people tend to forget that.
I get it. Here, read this out loud. This is a really great piece from the chapter.
If electricity drives our world with bright lights that make night into day and replenish our electronics with never-ending power, we pay for it. Shabbat suggests stepping away from those speeding electrons. Shabbat is about unplugging. You light candles Friday evening to declare that sometimes a beautiful flame is all we need, especially if the flame comes with friends, family, and something good to eat.
Yeah, so if Shabbat is about taking back our time, it's also about stepping away from certain conveniences like electronics, like speeding electrons.
Well, I have to tell you, when I got my insulin pump, I joined a Jewish pumpers group that talked about you were allowed to bolus for food, but you weren't allowed to change your reservoir or do any of that stuff. So you had to make sure that if you were running low on insulin, you had to discard the old one before it was empty. I've never done that in my entire life. I run my insulin to the end of that reservoir, and I looked at that and I said, no. I'm lucky now because insulin is part of my Medicare Part B, but so I don't have to pay for it. But when I was paying $100 a bottle, I'm not throwing it out.
I get it.
I had to change it on Shabbat. I'm changing it on Shabbat, and I'm not taking it off.
Well, so Shabbat may be about unplugging, but it's also about pikuach nefesh.
Yeah. So I get to save my life, thank God.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
So what I love about this piece is that, well, not only is it valuable for us to exercise a certain discipline in unplugging,
right,
but a simple Shabbat candle and its beautiful flame can really ground the Shabbat experience in simplicity. What you need is time, people you love, a nice meal, a candle, and its basic beauty. That's it. It's not fancy. It doesn't require a lot of bells and whistles or electrons.
But I have to tell you that we don't go upstairs until our candles are out.
Yeah.
Sometimes they last forever. You watch it and you go, oh, we'll be upstairs by 10:30, 11:15.
Yeah, well, because you don't want the house to burn down. I get it.
I don't want the cats to mess with it either.
So Shabbat is a time to take back time. It's a time to step away from common practices like using electricity. I'm not exactly advocating that we become completely Shomer Shabbat and have nothing to do with electricity. That is your choice, of course.
Well, then we wouldn't have.
I am saying is that there's a spiritual value to unplugging, and I think that's the key to Rabbi Shapiro's perspective. I think he's also trying to help us understand that the seventh day is a soulful moment, that Shabbat is the central time address, if you will, for the soul. There's no more important day to capture that soul and to be grateful for all that brings us personally, communally, in connection with God.
Well, I want to share with you, one of my doctors is a, I guess you'd call him conservadox, because they don't have services now. They have in-person services, social distancing apart, that you have to apply for, like if you have Kaddish. He said that he's just really jealous that I can go to services on Shabbat. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he's doing other people's services, but his synagogue is not doing online services. Mm-hmm. So, and he misses it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's reasonable for one to step away completely from electronics.
Right.
Because it is Shabbat. You know, the question is, what do you do when that effort serves, not necessarily on purpose, but serves to disconnect you from your regular practice and your regular community? I know some communities, some Orthodox communities are finding ways to pray in limited numbers or outside or what have you, but we're getting into cold months.
Getting to be winter.
For those of us in cold weather, it's difficult to go outside safely. What's interesting is that, this capturing of soul can be difficult in an age of COVID.
Yeah.
But it's important nonetheless to talk about Shabbat as that period of time where we can think about the mixture of God and spirituality and morality and deep existential yearning, and put that all together, and it starts to look like our soul. That place of faith and yearning, that place of connection with God and sacred community.
Yep.
Shabbat is a wonderful time to reflect and capture that soul, as Rabbi Shapiro says. Listen, it's time, 5:30.
Thank you very much.
I want to just be mindful of your time. I'm going to continue to deliver the material because we're recording.
Okay.
Others will be able to watch it. Maybe we can drum up some business for next time. Because
send me the link when you finish, when you put it up, and I'll watch the end.
Yeah, sounds good. I hope to put it up tonight. I have some others I'm putting up tonight as well.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, my pleasure, Devorah. Thanks for joining. Do appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. See ya. Say hi to Bob. Okay, Chebre. So we've learned so far that Shabbat is about taking back our time. Shabbat is about stepping away from electrons. Shabbat is a way of capturing our soul. Shabbat also is a paradigm of freedom, as we see here in Deuteronomy 5, verse 15. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the eternal your God freed you from there. Therefore, the eternal your God has commanded you to observe Shabbat. So there are no mistakes in the Torah. The order of Torah means everything. And so we have this memory, this command of remembering that we were slaves in the land of Egypt and that God heard our cry and freed us so that we could go forward And what's the next thing that we see here? That we are to observe Shabbat. So a function of our freedom, or as a function of our freedom, we celebrate and observe Shabbat. Shabbat is a practice of freedom. Shabbat is an outcome of freedom. And we know, thanks to scholarship by Eugene Borowitz of blessed memory, Rabbi Borowitz talked about our responsibility to live by the covenant. We are free to be responsible. We have the free will that is moderated by Torah. And one of those commandments, of course, is to observe Shabbat. In addition, here in Exodus 31, verse 17, we add to this understanding that Shabbat is a reflection of our freedom. We also learn that Shabbat is a time for renewal. In 6 days, the Eternal made heaven and earth. And on the seventh day, God ceased from work and was refreshed. So we, created in God's image, we created B'Tselem Elohim, have the opportunity every Shabbat to exercise our freedom as a way of choosing to desist from work and to make sure that we rest. And in our rest, we can hope to achieve refreshment, renewal. Shabbat vayinafash. So, in other words, according to Rabbi Shapiro of blessed memory, Shabbat becomes a spiritual combo, a combination of the soul in which we weave together freedom, rest, and refreshment. And in this combination, we understand Shabbat then to be a day for liberation, freedom from daily obligations. And with that freedom from daily obligations, we poise ourselves for the renewal. And Shabbat becomes that vessel in time, that island in time for all these wonderful activities. Taking a nap, going to services, studying Talmud, having a wonderful meal on a Friday evening or on a Saturday afternoon, enjoying Havdalah at the end of Shabbat, connecting with community, thinking deeply about God and God's place in our lives, lifting our souls, nourishing our spirits. Shabbat is the time for such beautiful activities. And by the way, I'm thinking about Owen Sing Ruby and other summer camps where we enjoy Shirah together, music, Rikudei Am, dance. And certainly in other contexts, we enjoy such music and such dance and other cultural activities that serve to keep us. Just as Ahad Am said, more than we have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept us. And so Shabbat becomes the time for us to do the activities that bring us freedom and renewal, rest and refreshment. And so we underscore this again, this power, this positivity of Shabbat, that it is a time for liberation and refreshment or replenishment. And of course, we welcome in this period, we usher in this sacred moment of liberation and replenishment with light. And with light comes warmth, and with warmth comes smiles. In the words of Rabbi Shapiro, I don't open mail on Shabbat so that I can be free of bills and expectations. Not wearing a watch on Shabbat reminds me that Shabbat is an island in time. I listen to Shabbat music while driving home from work on Friday afternoon. I use different dishes on Shabbat. Even if we're eating pizza, the dishes tell me this day is different. When we do the blessings around the Friday evening table, we often make a FaceTime or Skype connection with family who live elsewhere. I like writing a letter with real ink and paper to someone with whom I've lost contact. I like to go to a museum on Shabbat. Museums are places that touch something other than the weekday part of me. They lift me up. So Shabbat becomes not only a time to do fun things, special things like music or dance or prayer, or connecting with community or God, but it's also a time for us to try something new, making sure we have special dishes, writing to somebody we haven't connected to in a long time, not wearing a watch because Shabbat is an island in time. So many wonderful possibilities to think about. And how can we make our Shabbat experience different in character than our everyday experience? That's an important question as we consider the purpose of Shabbat and we consider Ahad Ha'am's wisdom that more than us keeping Shabbat, Shabbat has kept us because we've made shifts and changes in the way we live our daily lives to create a special experience during the Shabbat. And the truth is that this responsibility is acutely important to us as Reformed Jews. We are commanded by God to continue what Jews have done for the duration. And of course, our opportunity and responsibility is to create, to define a Shabbat that resonates with tradition and the past, but also with the present, the future, contemporary life, what happens next. And if we do that, we'll be able to sustain Shabbat in the most meaningful of ways. So what then is our reform responsibility? I read from Rabbi Shapiro's chapter. Although we may depart from ancient practices, we live with a sense of responsibility to the continuum of Jewish experience. Therefore, we try to balance our creativity in practice with the desire to conserve and adapt what speaks to us from the past. We are free to be novel, but proud as well to maintain our connections with the best of the Jewish past. So we have an opportunity to make our Shabbat meaningful by opening up a prayer book that connects us in prayer with Jews of all different stripes and connects us with our ancestors who opened up similar prayer books and uttered similar prayers. It also gives us the opportunity to think of unique ways to make Shabbat, to make it special, to make it novel. Going out into the garden and being close to the earth and cultivating nourishment can be a wonderful way to celebrate Shabbat. Making a special time for us to connect with our kids or our grandkids, to read stories, or to go for a walk, or to share a special meal, or to do something completely different than we would during the week. Shabbat gives us that freedom. Our tradition avails us that liberty to not only keep Shabbat, but to keep it in a way that inspires us. The soul of Shabbat, right? So Shabbat's not only good for our souls, but it has its own soul. These don'ts regarding Shabbat are voluminous. But if the soul Shabbat has to do with joy and refreshment, why does the halakha restrict rather than encourage so many behaviors? The rabbis very simply devoted so much effort toward defining work on Shabbat because it is not easy to define what rest on Shabbat is supposed to be. The rabbis knew resting on Shabbat couldn't involve merely taking the day off or sleeping late. The absence of activity alone couldn't create Shabbat. On the contrary, Shabbat is very much associated with involvement in friendship and community, plus prayer and study in the synagogue. That spirit of Shabbat is lively and full of stimulation. To ensure, however, that weekday activities didn't overwhelm the seventh day's rest, the rabbis devoted attention to prohibiting activities that might intrude on Shabbat. That's why we're called to step away from the electrons, to power down. I like this piece from Rabbi Shapiro's work. Shabbat became the protected clearing when whatever was not work could blossom. That would be rest. If the week is for the business of life or making our mark on the world, Shabbat is the opposite. We step back from the world to let it be. Imagine a seesaw going up and down all week. Imagine the same device when left alone. It slows down. It reaches equilibrium. That is Shabbat rest. As Harvey Cox, professor at Harvard University, puts it, the Sabbath means being fully aware of the apple tree, but having no judgments, plans, or prospects for it. If this is what the halakha is all about, why not follow it? You can do so. Reform Judaism invites Jews to explore the fullness of our historic tradition. At the same time, most Reform Jews depart from traditional definitions of Shabbat work and rest because we believe that they do not represent the final word on Jewish practice. It's in this spirit that we study Talmud on Saturday mornings in our Talmud by the Lake class, which actually happens on Zoom. And we learn about halakha, we learn about Jewish law, and we learn how to feel empowered by how it informs our lives. Has a vote, not a veto, as we like to say, but it makes for a wonderful Shabbat activity. Allows us to explore the fullness of our legal tradition and our historic tradition. It gives us a chance to really think about how we can not only make Shabbat meaningful, but to establish it as this protected clearing, this place that allows us to engage uniquely in what is special about Shabbat, allowing us to truly be thankful and attentive, full of awareness of the beauty and the power and the spirit around us without being so judgmental. Very powerful, very powerful. And as will come as no surprise, Shabbat is a call for deeper awareness. The rituals aren't just practice for ritual's sake. They're not there to squelch our souls, as Rabbi Shapiro says. Shabbat ultimately is a call to greater awareness. The rituals we do raise our intentionality, help us pay better attention to what we need to make Shabbat meaningful and what we need to sustain our Jewish experience. And what's beautiful about Reform Judaism is that it acknowledges this effort, this call to awareness, this ability to hear the summons to keep Shabbat and to utilize it for rest and relaxation and refreshment and renewal and for freedom. The freedom to make a difference, the freedom to be a force for good. One thing beautiful about Reform Judaism is it understands that the way in which we come to this deeper awareness can be very different depending on who's involved. So, here are some things that we can do to make Shabbat meaningful. We can be there in person. I wish. Be a while before we can be back at 5959 North Sheridan. In the meantime, you can be there online. You can be there in your own personal space, in your homes, wherever you live. To make Shabbat meaningful is about presence, being able to say, Hineni, I'm here. Lighting candles, starting off the Shabbat with light and smiles. Kiddush and Motzi, tzedakah, conversation with friends and family and your community, being at the synagogue, being at temple, doing something to make Shabbat different than the rest of the week, spending time with family and friends, studying Torah. And finally, Shabbat doesn't just happen. You have to make it happen. I mean, yes, the calendar unfolds and time turns, and Shabbat will always come back 1 week later. But there is an active process that makes Shabbat truly special, and that has to do with taking back our time. Yes, our lives sometimes are challenging. We run around, we hasten and hurry, we feel overwhelmed, jostled around. But Shabbat becomes the antidote to our speed. It slows our speed down. It slows us down enough to recognize that there are broad possibilities that will make us healthier in both body and soul. So, looking forward to Shabbat here midweek. And in advance, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, Umevorach, a Sabbath of peace and blessing, and of Shlemut, of wholeness. And may it be a Shabbat of refreshment, and a Shabbat of freedom, and a Shabbat where we stay away from electrons and we embrace the beautiful light, the natural light, the candle light of Shabbat. May that bring us warmth and smiles and renewed commitment to take back our time, to celebrate Shabbat, and to enable Shabbat to keep us just like it has kept our people over the millennia. Amen ve'amen. Bye-bye. Lehitraot.